The salvage ship Iron Wake drifted through the darkness of space like a metal ghost. Captain Park Dae-ho stood at the bridge window, his tired eyes fixed on the dying red star ahead. They had been searching for 3 weeks now, looking for old ships and stations to strip for parts. Money was tight. The crew was hungry. They needed a good find. "Captain," called Kim Yuna from her station. She was the youngest on the crew, barely 23, with short black hair and curious eyes that never seemed to rest. "I am picking up something strange. There is a structure near the star. It is big." Dae-ho walked over to her screen. The image showed a massive station, ancient and dark, orbiting slowly around the red dwarf. It was shaped like nothing he had ever seen before, all curves and sharp angles that hurt to look at for too long. "How old is it?" he asked. Lee Tae-sung, their language expert and historian, came over to look. He was a thin man with gray at his temples and glasses that he constantly pushed up his nose. He studied the readings and his face went pale. "This cannot be right," he whispered. "The computer says it is at least 12 million years old. That is older than any known civilization, older than the hegemony, older than everything." The crew gathered on the bridge. Medical Officer Han Ji-woo, a calm woman with steady hands. Navigator Baek Soo-jin, tall and quiet, always watching. Engineer Cho Min-ho, who laughed too loud and worked too hard. They all stared at the impossible station. "We should call this in," Ji-woo said. "The Galactic Council will want to know." "The Council will take months to respond," Dae-ho replied. "By then, someone else will find it. We go in first. We see what is there. Then we decide." Nobody argued. They were all thinking about the money. A find like this could set them up for life. The Iron Wake docked at an ancient port that somehow still worked. The doors opened with a sound like a dying animal. Inside, the air was cold and stale but breathable. Emergency lights flickered on as they walked, as if the station was waking up after a long sleep. Yuna led the way with her scanner. The corridors were wide enough for giants. Strange symbols covered every wall, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Tai-sung photographed everything, muttering to himself as he tried to translate. "I recognize some of these root," he said. "They are similar to old hegemony script, but different, older." They walked for an hour through empty halls. Dust covered everything. Whatever had lived here was long gone. Then Yuna's scanner beeped loudly. "There is a power source ahead," she said. "Something is still running." The corridor ended at a massive door, sealed tight. Yuna found a control panel and started working on it. Minho helped her, his big hands gentle with the delicate ancient circuits. "Almost got it," Yuna muttered. "Just need to—" The door exploded open. Not outward, but inward, as if something had pulled it. The crew stumbled back, weapons raised, but nothing attacked. There was only darkness beyond. Dae-ho turned on his light and stepped inside. The chamber was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into shadow high above. The walls were covered in writing, thousands upon thousands of words, all in that same strange script. But Dae-ho barely noticed any of it. He was too busy staring at the woman on the cross. She hung in the center of the room, suspended in a beam of pale blue light. Her skin was white as snow, her hair black as the void between stars. She wore robes that might have been beautiful once, but were now torn and stained with something dark. Her eyes were closed, her face was peaceful, and her body was pierced by dozens of silver stakes. Through her hands, through her feet, through her chest and stomach and shoulders. Each stake glowed faintly, and where they touched her skin, dark veins spread like poison. "Gods above," Jiwoo breathed. "She is still alive. The stasis field is keeping her alive." Yuna walked forward slowly, her hand reaching out toward the imprisoned woman. "Who did this to her? Why?" Tae-sung was already reading the walls, his translator working overtime. His voice shook as he spoke. "This is a prison for one person. These writings are warnings. They say—" He swallowed hard. "They say her name is Velith, Empress Velith, last ruler of the Noctari Empire. They call her the Devourer of Worlds, the Endless Hunger, the Dark Mother who drank the stars." "Noctari?" Sujin frowned. "I have never heard of them." "Nobody has," Tae-sung replied. They were erased, completely removed from history. This station exists outside map space for a reason. Someone wanted her forgotten forever. Minho stepped back. Then we should leave. Now, before we wake her up. We cannot wake her, Taesung said. The stasis field is perfect. She will hang here until the universe ends. Nothing can... A soft sound interrupted him. A click. Everyone turned to see Yuna standing at a control panel she had found hidden in the floor. Yuna, Daeho said carefully. What did you do? Nothing. I just touched it. I did not mean to... The blue light flickered, just for a moment. But in that moment, the woman's eyes opened. They were red, deep red, like old blood. And they were looking directly at Yuna. The stasis field stabilized again. The woman's eyes froze mid-motion. But everyone had seen. She was aware. Somehow, after 1,000 years of imprisonment, she was still aware. Jiwoo grabbed Yuna and pulled her back. We need to leave, right now. But Daeho did not move. He was staring at the woman's face, at the dried tracks running down her cheeks from her frozen eyes. She was crying, he said quietly. When they put her here, she was crying. She is a monster, Taesung said. The warnings are very clear about that. Monsters do not cry. Captain, I want to know what happened here. Daeho turned to face his crew. I want to know why someone went to all this trouble to torture one woman for eternity. I want to know what she did that was so terrible they had to erase her entire species from history. And if the warnings are true, Jiwoo asked. Daeho looked back at the crucified queen. Her red eyes stared at nothing, frozen in time. But he could not shake the feeling that she was still watching them, still waiting, still hoping. Then we run, he said, but we find out first. They made camp in a chamber near the entrance, far from the prison room. But that night none of them could sleep. And when Daeho walked to check on the ship, he found Yuna standing at the door to the queen's chamber, staring into the darkness. She has been alone for 1,000 years, Yuna said without turning around. Can you imagine? 1,000 years of nothing but pain and silence. Even if she is a monster, nobody deserves that. Daeho put his hand on her shoulder. We will find the truth, I promise. But as they stood there in the darkness, neither of them could shake the feeling that the truth would change everything. And far behind them, frozen in her eternal prison, Empress Velith waited. She had been waiting for 1,000 years. She could wait a little longer. But for the first time in centuries, she felt something she had forgotten existed. Hope. 3 days passed on the ancient station. 3 days of reading walls and searching rooms and arguing about what to do. The crew of the Iron Wake was divided, and the division grew wider with each new discovery. Taesung worked without rest, translating the warnings that covered the prison chamber. He filled notebook after notebook with his findings, and with each page, his face grew more troubled. The Noctari were vampires, he told the crew during their evening meal. Not blood drinkers, but something stranger. They fed on emotions, on feelings. The writings say they could drain the fear and anger from entire populations. That sounds evil, Minho said through a mouthful of food. That is what I thought at first. Taesung pushed his glasses up. But the more I translate, the more confused I become. The language is strange. These warnings were not written by the Noctari. They were written by someone else, someone who hated them very much. Yuna had been spending her time differently. While the others explored the station, she sat in the ship, digging through the restricted sections of the Galactic database. It was illegal, but she was good with computers, and nobody was watching. What she found made her sick. The Noctari were not monsters, she announced that night. They were the opposite. For 50,000 years, they protected the galaxy. They went to war-torn planets and fed on the hatred there. They visited plague worlds and consumed the despair. Everywhere they went, they left peace behind. Then why were they destroyed? Sujin asked. Yuna pulled up file after file on her tablet. Because they were too powerful. The species that became the hegemony, the Valorians, the Kreth, the Mendori, they were growing empires back then, conquering, enslaving. The Noctari stopped them, again and again. For thousands of years, the Noctari stood between the conquerors and their victims. So the conquerors decided to remove the obstacle, Deho said quietly. Yes. Yuna's voice shook with anger. It was not a war. It was a trap. The 7 species worked together in secret. They invited the Noctari to a peace summit. They promised friendship. And when the Noctari came, trusting them, they attacked. She showed them images from hidden archives, ancient recordings that someone had tried very hard to delete. Ships burning in the void, cities crumbling, pale bodies floating in space, stakes driven through their hearts. They called it the Great Purification, Yuna said. They told the galaxy they were saving everyone from a terrible threat. But it was genocide, pure and simple. Jiwoo stared at the images with horror. How did they get away with it? They controlled the story. They erased the truth and wrote their own history. Within 100 years, nobody remembered the Noctari as anything but monsters. Yuna's hands curled into fists. They murdered billions of people and then made the galaxy thank them for it. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Minho spoke. What about the queen? Velith? How did she end up here? Yuna had found that answer too, buried deep in a corrupted file that took her hours to recover. She surrendered. When the war was lost, when her people were being hunted to extinction, she went to the hegemony leaders. She offered herself, the most powerful Noctari who ever lived, in exchange for mercy for the survivors. There were about 10,000 left by then, refugees hiding on distant moons. They agreed? Deho asked. They said yes. They took her and brought her here, to this station they built just for her. They crucified her with silver stakes that caused constant pain. They put her in stasis, so she would be aware but unable to move or speak. And then, Yuna had to stop. She was crying now. Then what? Sujin pressed. Then they broke their promise. They hunted down the survivors, every man, woman, and child, and killed them all. They recorded it. They made her watch through a connection to the stasis field. They wanted her to see her sacrifice meant nothing. They wanted her to suffer forever, knowing she failed. Nobody spoke. Nobody could. Deho stood and walked to the window. Outside, the red star burned low and angry. He thought about his own people, about Earth's history, about all the times humans had been seen as lesser, as animals, as things to be used and thrown away. We have to help her, he said. What? Minho jumped up. Captain, she is still dangerous. Even if the history is true, she could kill us all. She has been tortured for 1,000 years for a crime she did not commit. Her entire species was murdered. Everything she loved was taken from her. Deho turned to face his crew. I will not be part of that. I will not walk away and leave her to suffer forever. The hegemony will come for us, Jiwoo warned. If we free her, we become enemies of the most powerful force in the galaxy. They are already our enemies. They just have not told us yet. Yuna stood beside Deho. I found something else in those files, something called the Silence Protocol. It is a list of species the hegemony considers potential threats. Species they plan to eliminate before they become too powerful. Let me guess, Sujin said darkly. Humanity is on that list. We are number 7. They have been watching us for 200 years. They are waiting until we spread out enough to make elimination efficient. The weight of that truth settled over them like a cold blanket. So we are dead either way, Minho said slowly, whether we help the vampire queen or not. The difference is whether we die as cowards or as people who did something right. Deho looked at each of his crew members. I am not ordering anyone to help. This is a choice, but I know what my choice is. One by one, they decided. Jiwoo thought about her oath to help the sick and suffering. She nodded. Sujin thought about her grandmother, who had survived a refugee camp as a child. She nodded. Minho thought about his little brothers back on Earth, who he had promised to protect. He sighed and nodded. Tai Sung thought about every lie he had ever been told about history. He nodded. Only Yuna did not nod. She had already made her choice days ago. Then we do it, Deho said. We free the queen. But that night, when the others were preparing tools and studying the stasis field, Yuna slipped away. She walked through the dark corridors alone until she reached the prison chamber. The blue light still glowed. The crucified woman still hung motionless. Yuna sat down on the cold floor and looked up at her. I do not know if you can hear me, she said softly. I do not know if you are aware of anything in there. But I want you to know something. I am sorry for what they did to you, for what they did to your people. It was wrong. It was evil, and I am so, so sorry. She talked for hours about Earth, about humanity, about their own dark history and their long struggle to become better, about her mother, who had taught her that kindness was never wasted, even on those who might not deserve it. And when she finally fell silent, exhausted, she could have sworn she saw something change in those frozen red eyes. Just for a moment, just the smallest flicker. Not hunger, not hate, gratitude. The next morning, the ship's computer woke them with an alarm. A hegemony patrol had entered the system. They were scanning for signs of life. "We have 72 hours, Deho announced. Maybe less. After that, they find us." He looked at the crew gathered before him, his family in all the ways that mattered. "Let us get to work." The prison chamber hummed with ancient energy as the crew worked to understand its systems. Tai Sung had translated enough of the controls to give them a basic understanding. The stasis field was powered by the station itself, drawing energy from the dying star outside. The silver stakes were not just physical, they were channels for a constant stream of pain, designed to keep Velith weak even in her frozen state. "We have to remove the stakes first," Jiwoo explained, studying her medical scans. "Each one is connected to the stasis system. If we just turn off the field, the shock could kill her." "How many stakes?" Daeho asked. 47. Minho whistled low. "That is a lot of stabbing for one person." "They wanted to make sure," Yuna said quietly. "They wanted to make sure she suffered." The first stake was the hardest. Sujin and Minho gripped it together, their muscles straining against metal that had been embedded for 1,000 years. When it finally pulled free with a wet sound, the entire station shook. Alarms began to wail in languages no one understood. "Security systems," Tae-sung shouted. "The station is trying to stop us." Doors began to seal themselves. Lights flickered and died. In the darkness, they could hear machinery coming to life. Ancient weapons powering up after an eternity of sleep. "Keep working," Daeho ordered. "Whatever happens, we keep working." They pulled the second stake, the third, the fourth. With each removal, Velith's body twitched slightly, life slowly returning to frozen muscles. But the station fought back harder with every step. A panel exploded near Tai-sung, throwing him against the wall. Jiwoo rushed to help him while the others continued pulling stakes. 15 out, 20. The queen's fingers began to move. "She is waking up," Yuna breathed. "Faster," Daeho said. "We need to go faster." 30 stakes out. The alarms grew louder. Something was moving in the corridors outside. Heavy footsteps of automated guardians that had waited centuries for this moment. Minho pulled the 31st stake and turned toward the door. "I will hold them off. Keep going." "Minho, I am the biggest. I will buy you time." He grabbed a metal bar from the floor and grinned his too-wide grin. "Save the queen. I want to say I helped rescue royalty." He ran into the corridor. Moments later, they heard fighting. Metal against metal. Minho's shouts of effort and pain. Then a terrible crash and silence. Yuna wiped tears from her eyes and kept pulling stakes. 35, 38, 40. Velith's eyes were moving now, tracking them as they worked. Her mouth opened slightly, trying to speak, but no sound came out. "Almost there," Jiwoo said. "Just 7 more." The ceiling began to collapse. Ancient supports, weakened by the power surges, started to give way. A beam fell toward Yuna. Sujin moved without thinking, shoving the younger woman out of the way. The beam caught her arm instead, crushing it against the floor. Sujin screamed. Daeho and Tae-sung struggled to lift the beam, while Jiwoo worked on the remaining stakes with shaking hands. "Leave me," Sujin gasped. "Finish the job." "Nobody gets left behind," Daeho growled. They lifted the beam just enough for Sujin to pull free. Her right arm hung useless, destroyed beyond repair. She laughed bitterly through her tears. "Always wanted a robot arm anyway." 3 stakes left. 2. 1. Jiwoo gripped the final stake, the one driven directly through Velith's heart, and pulled with all her strength. It came free. The stasis field collapsed. The blue light died, and Empress Velith, last of the Noctari, fell forward into empty air. Yuna caught her. The queen weighed almost nothing. 1,000 years of imprisonment had withered her body to skin and bone. Her white skin was stretched tight over sharp features. Her black hair hung limp and dead. Only her eyes held life, deep red pools that stared at Yuna with something between confusion and wonder. Why? The word came out as a croak, barely audible. Why would you do this? Before Yuna could answer, she felt it. They all felt it. A wave of hunger so powerful it drove them to their knees. Velith's eyes went completely black, and her mouth opened to reveal fangs that had not tasted food in a millennium. Daeho reached for his weapon. Taesung scrambled backward. Jiwoo stood frozen with fear, but Yuna did not move. She kept holding the starving queen, looking directly into those terrible black eyes. I know you are hungry, she said softly. I know you could kill us all right now. You would be right to hate us. Our galaxy let this happen to you. We inherited their lies. Velith's claws extended, razor-sharp and trembling. Her whole body shook with the effort of restraint. A sound came from her throat, half growl, half sob. But we were not there, Yuna continued. We did not make those choices, and we choose differently now. We choose to help you. Please, please let us help you. The moment stretched into eternity. Everyone waited to die. Then Velith closed her eyes. The claws retracted. The hunger retreated. When she opened her eyes again, they were red once more, still frightening, but no longer empty. You stopped, Daeho whispered. You could have fed on us and did not. Velith laughed, but it was a broken sound. I have been a monster in their stories for 1,000 years. I will not prove them right. Not after. She looked at Yuna. Not after someone finally apologized. Her legs gave out. Yuna lowered her gently to the floor, cradling her like a child. The most powerful being the galaxy had ever known, reduced to a skeleton wrapped in pale skin, weeping without tears because her body had no moisture left to spare. I watched them die, Velith whispered. My people. My children. They made me watch every single death. I felt each one. I remember all their names. 10,247 names. I say them to myself every moment. It is all I have left. You have more now, Yuna said. You have us. Sujin limped over, her ruined arm wrapped in a makeshift sling. Minho. Did anyone see what happened to Minho? Taesung's face was pale. I will go check. He returned minutes later, carrying something in his arms. A jacket torn and bloodied. Nothing else. The Guardians, he said. There was nothing left to bring back. The weight of that loss settled over them. Minho, who laughed too loud. Minho, who worked too hard. Minho, who died so they could save a stranger. I am sorry, Velith said. He died for me. I did not even know his name. Cho Minho, Daeho said firmly. His name was Cho Minho, and he knew exactly what he was doing. They helped Velith to her feet. She could barely stand, but she refused to be carried. They are coming, she said. I can feel them. Hegemony minds filled with hatred and fear. They know something happened here. They are coming to make sure I stay buried. Then we leave, Daeho said. Now. They moved through collapsing corridors, past destroyed guardians and sealed doors. The station was dying around them, its ancient systems failing without the stasis field to stabilize them. By the time they reached the Iron Wake, the whole structure was shaking itself apart. Sujin took the pilot seat with her one good arm. The ship launched into space just as the station began to break into pieces behind them. Course? She asked. Daeho looked at Velith, who sat wrapped in blankets, still shivering despite the ship's warmth. Earth, he said. We are going home. Velith met his eyes. They will come for you, for all of you. The hegemony does not forgive. They do not forget. Neither do we, Yuna said. She took Velith's hand, cold as ice, thin as paper. We remember Minho. We remember your people, and we remember what they did. Velith looked at their joined hands. Such a simple gesture, such a human thing to do. No Nuktari had touched her without violence in over 1,000 years. The warmth of Yuna's fingers felt like sunlight on frozen ground. You are strange creatures, she said. Humans. You make no sense. Yuna smiled. We get that a lot. As the Iron Wake jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the dead star and its secrets behind, Velith allowed herself to feel something she had forgotten existed. Not just hope now, something warmer, something that frightened her more than any enemy ever could. Trust. The journey to Earth took 12 days. 12 days of healing, of learning, of slowly coming back to life. Velith spent the first 3 days in something like a coma. Her body, starved for 1,000 years, was trying to repair itself with nothing to work with. Jiwoo monitored her constantly, worried that she would simply fade away. She needs to feed, the doctor said. Without emotional energy, her body cannot heal. Then she feeds on us, Daeho said. We volunteer. Captain, we do not know what that means. She could kill whoever she feeds from? Then we find out. But when Velith finally woke, she refused. I will not take from you, she said, her voice still weak. You have given enough. Your friend died for me. I will not take more. You will die, Jiwoo argued. I have wanted to die for a very long time. Perhaps it is time. It was Yuna who found the answer. She had been reading everything she could find about the Noctari, and she noticed something interesting. You feed on emotions, right? You do not have to take them completely. You can just sip, like drinking from a river without emptying it. Velith's eyes flickered with something like amusement. You are correct, but taking without permission is how we became monsters in your stories. My people swore oaths to only feed with consent, to only take what was freely given. Then I freely give. Yuna sat down beside her. Take what you need. I trust you. You should not. I know. Do it anyway. Velith hesitated for a long moment. Then slowly, she reached out and placed her pale hand on Yuna's forehead. The sensation was strange. Yuna felt a slight pull, like water draining from a bathtub. She became aware of all the small fears she carried. Worry about the future, anxiety about the hegemony, grief for Minho. And then gently, some of that weight lifted. Not all of it. Just enough to feel lighter. Velith pulled her hand back. Color had returned to her cheeks. Her eyes were brighter. You taste like sunshine, she whispered. Like hope made solid. Humans. You feel things so strongly, so openly. I have fed on 1,000 species, and none of them burn like you do. Is that bad? It is terrifying. A small smile crossed Velith's face. And wonderful. Over the following days, other crew members volunteered. Daeho let her take his old anger at injustice. Sujin shared her fear of failure. Even Tai Sung, still nervous around the Queen, offered his academic anxieties. Each feeding left them feeling strangely peaceful and left Velith stronger. This is what we were meant to be, she told them one evening. Partners, not predators. We take the darkness and leave light behind. For 50,000 years, we traveled the galaxy doing exactly this. Healing wounds, ending conflicts. We were not perfect. No species is. But we tried to be good. Then why did they hate you so much? Sujin asked. Because good is dangerous. Velith's eyes grew distant. The hegemony species wanted to conquer. They wanted slaves and resources and power. We stood in their way. Every time they tried to crush a weaker species, we appeared to stop them. They could not defeat us in battle, so they decided to defeat us with lies. She told them the full story then. How the hegemony leaders had met in secret, plotting for decades. How they had developed weapons specifically designed to hurt Noctari. The silver stakes, the stasis fields, the psychic disruptors. How they had pretended to want peace while preparing for murder. I believed them, Velith said, her voice hollow. When they came to us with treaties and promises, I believed them. I was old even then. Old and tired and hoping so desperately for an end to the conflict. I convinced my people to trust them. It was not your fault, Yuna said. Was it not? I was the Empress. My word was law. When I said we would attend the peace summit unarmed, my people obeyed. When I said the hegemony could be trusted, my people believed. 50 million Noctari gathered in one place, thinking they were celebrating the end of war. She closed her eyes. It was the end. Just not the kind we hoped for. The attack had been swift and total. Hegemony ships emerged from hiding and opened fire. The Noctari died by the millions before they understood what was happening. Those who tried to flee were hunted across the galaxy. Within a year, a species that had existed for 300,000 years was reduced to scattered refugees. I surrendered to save the last of them, Veleth continued. 10,000 survivors hiding in the dark spaces between stars. I thought my sacrifice would mean something. I thought the hegemony had some honor left. They did not, Daiho said quietly. No, they killed everyone. Every adult, every child, every elder who remembered the old ways. And they made me watch, helpless in my prison, as my children died one by one. The room was silent. Even the hum of the ship's engines seemed to fade. There is more, Veleth said. Something you need to know, though it will bring you no joy. She looked at Daiho. You asked once why the hegemony would torture me forever instead of simply killing me. The answer is that they need me. Need you for what? I know their secrets, all of them. In my 300,000 years, I witnessed the birth of their civilizations. I saw the crimes they committed to build their empires. I know where the bodies are buried, sometimes literally. As long as I exist, that knowledge exists. They cannot kill me because they do not know if I have hidden that knowledge somewhere. Have you? Veleth smiled grimly. I have. But the hiding place is my own mind. If they had ever found a way to read Noctari thoughts, they would have learned everything. So they kept me alive and suffering, hoping that eventually I would break and tell them willingly. You never did. I had 10,000 names to remember, 10,000 reasons to resist. I would have held out until the stars went cold. Taesung leaned forward. You mentioned something called the Silence Protocol. What is it? Veleth's expression darkened. The hegemony's long-term plan. They do not just want to rule the galaxy, they want to own it completely. Any species that might one day challenge them is marked for elimination. They wait until the target species spreads out, becomes dependent on galactic trade, forgets how to survive alone. Then they strike. How many species have they eliminated? 47 that I know of, probably more since my imprisonment. They are very patient. They plan in centuries. By the time a species realizes they are prey, it is already too late. And humanity, Yuna asked, though she already knew the answer. You are on the list. Number 7, last I knew. The hegemony has been watching you since you first left your homeworld. They think you are unpredictable, emotional, dangerous. A strange look crossed her face. They were right to worry. There is something different about humans. Something I have never encountered before. What do you mean? Veleth considered her words carefully. Most species in the galaxy are stable. Their emotions run in predictable channels. They feel things in moderation. But humans, she shook her head. You feel everything at full intensity. Joy, rage, love, despair. Your emotional energy is 10 times stronger than any species I have ever encountered. It makes you chaotic, hard to predict, hard to control. Is that why the hegemony fears us? Daiho asked. Partly, but mostly they fear what I see now, sitting in this small ship with 4 broken strangers who risked everything for someone they should hate. Veleth's eyes glowed faintly. They fear your capacity for compassion, for mercy, for choosing to be good when being cruel would be easier. She reached out and took Yuna's hand again. The young engineer had made a habit of this. Casual touch, freely given. The hegemony built their empire on fear and greed. They do not understand a species that would sacrifice itself for a stranger. It terrifies them, and they are right to be terrified. The ship's computer chimed. They were approaching Earth space. What happens now? Sujin asked. Now, Veleth said, rising to her feet with new strength, we see if humanity is everything I hope you are. Outside the windows, blue and green and beautiful, Earth appeared from the darkness. Home. Military ships surrounded them within minutes. Armed soldiers boarded and separated the crew. Veleth was taken away in chains made of silver, chains that burned her skin and weakened her powers. Daiho and the others were thrown into holding cells and questioned for hours. You brought an alien monster to Earth, the interrogator shouted at Daiho. Do you have any idea what you have done? I brought a victim of genocide home, Deho replied calmly. And everything I told you is true. Check the files yourself. They did. Una had copied all her research onto secure drives before leaving the station. She had hidden the drives well, and eventually the authorities found them. The information spread through military channels like fire through dry grass. But it did not matter. Not at first. Earth's government was terrified. The hegemony had already sent their ultimatum: surrender the Noctari prisoner within one standard week, or humanity would be declared an enemy species. War would follow. Extinction would follow that. We cannot fight them, said Prime Minister Oh Seung-gi during an emergency session of the World Council. They have 1,000 ships for every one of ours. They have technology we cannot even understand. If we refuse their demand, we die. And if we accept it? Asked Admiral Shin Ye-jin, commander of Earth's defense fleet. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for creative thinking. We hand over an innocent person to be tortured forever. We prove that humanity will bow to any bully with enough guns. We show the galaxy that our principles mean nothing when we are afraid. Principles do not matter if we are dead. With respect, Prime Minister, principles are the only thing that matters. They are what make us worth saving. The debate raged for 2 days. Meanwhile, something else was happening. Something the government had not expected. Una had friends in the media. Before her arrest, she had sent copies of her research to every journalist and network she could reach. The story broke while the politicians argued the true history of the Noctari, the hegemony's genocide, the silence protocol that threatened humanity itself. The public reaction was explosive. Protests erupted in every major city on Earth and across the colonies. Millions of people filled the streets, demanding that Velith be protected. They carried signs that read, "Not again," and "Never in our name." They sang songs about standing against tyranny. They told stories of their own ancestors, refugees, survivors, people who had been called monsters by those who wanted them dead. "We know this story," said a protest leader in Seoul. "We have lived this story, and we will not be the villains this time." In her prison cell, Velith felt it all. The surge of human emotion washed over her like a tidal wave. Anger and fear and determination, and something else, something golden and warm. Hope, not her own hope, but theirs. Millions of humans hoping for her, fighting for her. She wept. For the first time in 1,000 years, she had enough strength to weep properly. On the 5th day, Prime Minister Oh came to visit her personally. The prison was deep underground, surrounded by armed guards and more silver chains than seemed necessary. Oh walked through the security checkpoints alone, refusing an escort. When he reached Velith's cell, he stood for a long moment, just looking at her. She was still thin, still pale, but there was life in her eyes now. Real life, not just survival. "I have read the files," Oh said finally. "All of them. I know what they did to you. I know what they did to your people." "Then you know what kind of beings you are dealing with," Velith replied. "The hegemony does not negotiate. They do not compromise. If you defy them, they will destroy you." "Yes, I know." Oh sat down on the cold floor, putting himself at her level. "I have a question for you. A simple one, but I need an honest answer." "Ask. If we protect you, if we go to war for you, what will you do? Will you help us? Or will you wait until you are strong enough and then destroy us like they say you will?" Velith met his eyes. She could feel his emotions. The fear, the doubt, the desperate hope that he was making the right choice. She could have lied to him. She could have told him what he wanted to hear. But she had spent 1,000 years surrounded by lies, and she was so very tired of them. "I do not know," she said. Oh blinked. "That is not the answer I expected. I have lived 300,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have been worshipped as a goddess and hunted as a demon. I have done things I am proud of and things that haunt me still." She looked down at her hands scarred by the silver chains. "I do not know what I will become after this. The person I was died in that prison. Someone new is being born, and I do not yet know who she will be." "That is not very reassuring." "No, but it is true." Velith raised her eyes again. "What I can tell you is this. In all my long existence, I have never met a species that would sacrifice themselves for someone they should hate. Your people freed me when it would have been safer to leave me. Your people are fighting for me when it would be easier to surrender me. Your people are burning with righteousness on behalf of a stranger. She reached through the bars of her cell as far as the chains would allow. Her fingers stopped just short of touching him. I do not know what I will become, but I know that I will never become your enemy. Not after this. Not after everything you have given me. O looked at her hand. Then slowly he reached out and took it. The hegemony gave us a week, he said. It has been 5 days. In 2 days, they expect an answer. What will you tell them? The Prime Minister smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had made an impossible choice and was ready to face the consequences. I will tell them to come and take you themselves. Velith's hand tightened around his. You will all die. Maybe, but we will die as humans. Not as cowards, not as collaborators. He stood, still holding her hand. The council vote was this morning. It was not unanimous, but it was clear. Humanity stands with you, Empress Velith. Whatever comes next, you will not face it alone. He released her hand and walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back one last time. The girl, Kim Yuna. She has been asking to see you every day since you arrived. I will have her brought to you. Why? Because she was right about all of it, and because I think you need a friend right now, more than you need a prison. He left. Velith sat in the silence that followed, feeling the weight of what had just happened. Humanity had chosen not safety, not surrender, not self-preservation at any cost. They had chosen her. And somewhere, deep in the cold emptiness where her heart used to be, something began to beat again. 2 days later, Earth's response to the hegemony ultimatum was broadcast across the galaxy. We reject your demand, Prime Minister O announced, standing before the assembled World Council. We reject your authority. We reject your history of genocide and your plans for our future. Empress Velith is under the protection of humanity, and she will remain so. If you want her, you will have to come through us. The message ended with a single image, the flag of Earth flying beside a new symbol, the old crest of the Noctari Empire, resurrected after 1,000 years. The hegemony's response came within hours. War. But as the first enemy ships began to move toward human space, something unexpected happened. Other messages began to arrive, from minor species, from conquered peoples, from those who had lived under hegemony rule and remembered what it meant to be afraid. They had seen the broadcast, they had heard the story, and they were watching, waiting, hoping. Humanity was not alone, not anymore. The first battle came at the edge of human space, near a colony world called New Busan. 3,000 hegemony warships against 200 human defenders. The math was simple. Humanity should have died there. They did not. Admiral Shin Yejin had spent her entire career preparing for a war nobody believed would happen. She had studied every conflict in galactic history. She had run simulations of impossible scenarios, and she had learned one crucial lesson. When you cannot win by the rules, you change the rules. The hegemony fleet expected a traditional battle, ships in formation, predictable tactics, orderly retreat when the enemy proved stronger. That was how civilized species fought. Humans were not civilized. The colony's mining ships, slow, clumsy, meant for breaking asteroids, had been loaded with explosives and remote piloting systems. When the hegemony fleet arrived, they found not enemy warships but a swarm of suicide drones, each one aimed at a different target. The mines of New Busan had been rigged to detonate, filling local space with debris and radiation. Navigation became impossible. Hegemony ships crashed into each other, crashed into asteroids, crashed into traps they never saw coming. The Battle of New Busan was not a victory, but it was not a defeat either. The hegemony lost 400 ships, humanity lost none, and the message was clear: this war would not be easy. They fight like animals, a hegemony commander reported. They have no honor, no respect for the conventions of war. They fight like survivors, Velith corrected him, though he could not hear her. She was watching the battle footage with Yuna and Daeho, who had been released from custody to help with the war effort. They fight like people who have nothing to lose. The war spread across human space. Colony after colony faced the hegemony advance, and colony after colony found creative ways to resist. At Mars, the orbital platforms were turned into weapons, firing chunks of rock at approaching ships. At Europa, the ice moon's geothermal vents were weaponized, creating interference that scrambled hegemony sensors. At the asteroid belt, miners used their drilling equipment to hollow out entire rocks and turn them into hidden fortresses. Humanity fought with everything they had, and slowly, impossibly, they began to win. Velith helped where she could. Her knowledge of hegemony tactics, accumulated over thousands of years, proved invaluable. She knew their weaknesses, their arrogance, their rigid thinking, their inability to adapt to unexpected situations. She knew which species in the Hegemony Alliance hated each other, which commanders were cowards, which supply lines were vulnerable. The Valorians will not fight at night, she told Admiral Shin before a crucial engagement. Their eyes cannot adjust quickly. Attack at dusk when they are between shifts. The Kreth Fleet commander has a grudge against his Mendori counterpart. If you could make it look like one abandoned the other, they will spend more time fighting each other than fighting you. This transport route passes through an unstable gravity field. One well-placed bomb will make it impassable for months. But information was not all she provided. 6 months into the war, the Hegemony launched a major assault on Earth's moon. They intended to establish a base there, within striking distance of the human homeworld. Admiral Shin's fleet was out of position, too far away to help. The lunar colonies were defended only by ground-based weapons and a handful of patrol ships. Velith volunteered to help. She was still not at full strength. The centuries of starvation had weakened her in ways that might never fully heal. But she was stronger than any human, and she had abilities they could barely imagine. I will need to feed first, she told Deho. Deeply, more than sipping. I may not be able to stop myself. If I lose control, you will not, Deho said firmly. How can you be sure? Because I know you. Because Yuna knows you. Because you are not the monster they made you out to be? Velith looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. The volunteers came forward willingly. Hundreds of soldiers, civilians, colonists, all offering their fear and anger and pain. Velith moved among them, touching each forehead gently, taking only what was freely given. The experience was overwhelming. So much emotion, so much faith. When she finished, she was glowing. Pale light poured from her skin. Her eyes burned like red stars. The withered creature they had rescued from the prison chamber was gone. In her place stood something ancient and terrible and beautiful. I had forgotten, she whispered. I had forgotten what this felt like. The battle for the moon was short and brutal. Velith moved through the Hegemony landing forces like a ghost. She was faster than they could track, stronger than they could stop. Their weapons passed through her as if she were not there. Her claws cut through their armor like paper, but she did not kill blindly. She targeted officers, communications equipment, power generators. She sowed chaos and confusion, not slaughter. When enemy soldiers tried to surrender, she let them. Why do you not just destroy them all? A human commander asked her afterward. You could end this fight in minutes. Because I am not what they say I am, Velith replied. I never was, and I will not become a monster to defeat monsters. The moon was saved. The Hegemony retreated, and across the galaxy the story spread. The last Noctari Empress, fighting alongside humans, showing mercy to enemies who had shown her none. Other species began to take notice. The Torvani were a small, peaceful people who had been conquered by the Hegemony 3 centuries ago. They had served as laborers and servants ever since, their spirits broken by generations of oppression. But when they heard what was happening in human space, something stirred in them. The first Torvani uprising began 6 months into the war. Then another, and another. The Mendori had been junior partners in the Hegemony Alliance, always looked down upon by the older species. They had joined the Hegemony out of fear, not loyalty. When Hegemony fleets began losing battles to humans, some Mendori commanders started asking questions. What were they really fighting for? Why were they dying for masters who despised them? The first Mendori defection happened 8 months into the war. A single ship at first, then a squadron, then an entire fleet. The hegemony was cracking, but they were not defeated, not yet. And as the war entered its second year, they unveiled their ultimate weapon. Admiral Shin received the report with a pale face. She called an emergency meeting with the War Council, including Velith, Daeho, and Yuna. It is called the Sun Eater, she explained, displaying images on the tactical screen. An ancient device, built during the war against the Noctari. It has been hidden for 1,000 years, too dangerous to use, until now. The device was massive, a dark sphere the size of a small moon, covered in symbols that made Velith flinch with recognition. I remember this, she said quietly. They threatened to use it against us during the war. We thought they had destroyed it afterward. What does it do? Daeho asked. Exactly what the name suggests. It eats stars. Admiral Shin zoomed in on the sphere. According to our intelligence, it creates a field that destabilizes stellar fusion. Once activated, a star collapses into a black hole within hours. Everything in the solar system dies. They are bringing it here, Yuna realized. They are going to destroy the sun. They are going to make an example of us. Admiral Shin's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. The hegemony is losing control across the galaxy. Rebellions are spreading. Allies are defecting. They need to remind everyone what happens to those who resist. How long do we have? 3 days, maybe less. The room fell silent. After everything they had survived, everything they had achieved, it came down to this. A weapon too big to fight. A death sentence for their entire species. Velith stood. There may be a way. Everyone turned to look at her. The Sun Eater requires a living operator. Someone must guide it, control it, direct its power. That person must broadcast their consciousness across subspace to maintain the connection. For one moment, one brief moment, they are vulnerable. Vulnerable to what? To me. Velith's eyes glowed faintly. I was once the most powerful psychic in the galaxy. I could reach across space itself, touching minds at distances that should be impossible. If I could find the operator, I could stop them. Could you do it now? Velith was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. No, I am not strong enough. To reach that far, to fight someone connected to that much power, I would need to be fully restored. Completely restored. What would that require? A feeding like I have not experienced in over 1,000 years. Not sipping, not sharing, truly consuming emotional energy. She looked at Yuna, and her eyes were full of pain. It would kill whoever I fed from. No, Daeho said immediately. We find another way. There is no other way. Then we die together. We do not sacrifice our own. Velith smiled sadly. You see, this is why they fear you. This is why I love you. You would rather die than become what they are. She turned to leave, but Yuna caught her arm. Wait, the young engineer said. What if there is another option? What if you did not have to kill anyone? I have told you, the amount of energy I would need. I know. But what if you got it from many people at once? What if thousands of us shared together, each giving a little, so no one has to give everything? Velith paused. That has never been done. Noctari fed on individuals, not crowds. The chaos of collective emotion would be overwhelming. It could destroy me. But it is possible, theoretically. But human positive emotion is so strong, so chaotic. I have only ever fed on negativity because it was safer. What you are suggesting, taking hope and love and joy from thousands of people simultaneously, it could tear me apart. Yuna smiled. Or it could make you into something new. 3 days. 3 days to organize the largest psychic experiment in galactic history. 3 days to find out if hope could be a weapon. 3 days to save the sun. The call went out across human space. Humanity needed hope. Not soldiers, not weapons, not clever tactics or desperate plans. Just hope. Pure, concentrated belief that tomorrow could be better than today. The response was overwhelming. Billions of people signed up to participate on Earth and Mars, on colony stations and mining platforms, in ships traveling through the void. Everywhere humans existed, they gathered. Families held hands. Strangers embraced. Old enemies set aside their differences for one shining moment. Una designed the broadcast system herself, working without sleep for 48 hours. It used the same technology that had spread the truth about the Noctari across the galaxy, but reversed. Instead of sending information out, it would channel emotional energy in, all focused on one point, all focused on Velith. "This might kill you," Deho told the Empress as they prepared. "Yes," Velith agreed. "It might. You are doing it anyway. Your species is about to pour their hearts into saving a stranger. How could I do any less?" They set up the ritual chamber in the center of New Sol, Earth's largest city. 20 million people filled the streets around it, with billions more participating remotely. Velith sat in the middle of a circle of transmitters, pale and quiet and afraid. Una knelt beside her. "Whatever happens," Una said, "I want you to know something. Freeing you was the best thing I ever did. Getting to know you was the best thing that ever happened to me. You are not a monster. You never were. And whatever you become after this, I will still believe that." Velith took her hand. "You made me remember what it meant to hope. If I survive this, it will be because of you. If you survive this, I expect you to take me somewhere nice. I have never left the solar system. You have had 300,000 years to find good restaurants." Velith laughed, a real laugh, full and warm. "I know a place in the Andromeda Galaxy. The view is spectacular." "It is a date." Deho stepped forward. Behind him stood Sujin, her mechanical arm gleaming. Tae Sung, his notebooks finally set aside. Ji Woo steady as ever. And others, soldiers and scientists, civilians and leaders, all who had chosen to be here for this moment. "The Sun Eater will activate in 2 hours," Deho said. "Are you ready?" Velith closed her eyes. "Begin." The broadcast started. Across the solar system, across human colonies, across ships and stations, and everywhere else humans existed, people focused on hope. They thought of their children and their dreams. They remembered moments of joy. They imagined futures where their loved ones were safe, where the war was over, where everything they had fought for was worth it. And all of that emotion, billions of points of light, flowed toward Velith. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Velith screamed. Her body arched backward, pale light pouring from her eyes and mouth. The transmitters around her overloaded and exploded one by one. Her skin cracked like ancient pottery, golden light bleeding through. "She is dying," Jiwoo shouted. "We have to stop it." "No!" Velith's voice was barely recognizable, layered with 1,000 echoes. "Keep going. I can feel it." The positive emotion was not like anything she had ever experienced. Negative feelings were cold and heavy, easy to contain. But hope was fire. Love was lightning. Joy was the heart of a star. And humanity felt these things with an intensity that defied understanding. The energy poured into her, rewriting her from the inside out. Centuries of damage healed in seconds. But it did not stop there. The emotional fire kept burning, kept changing her, kept making her into something she had never been before. In space, the Sun Eater activated. The dark sphere began to pulse, sending waves of destructive energy toward Earth's sun. The operator, a Valorian priest who had volunteered to die for his masters, extended his consciousness across subspace, guiding the weapon toward its target. Velith felt him, a single mind connected to that vast machine, and she reached. Her consciousness exploded outward, riding the wave of human hope. She crossed distances that should have taken years in the space of a heartbeat. And when she found the operator, she did not attack him. She showed him the truth. Every memory of the Noctari genocide, every hidden crime of the hegemony, every lie they had told to justify their cruelty. She poured it all into his mind, and she forced him to feel what she had felt. The operator's faith shattered. His control over the Sun Eater wavered. And in that moment of weakness, Velith did something she had never done before. She did not take. She gave. She pushed all of that human hope, all of that beautiful, chaotic, overwhelming emotion, through the connection to the operator and beyond, into the Sun Eater itself, into the hegemony command ships watching the operation, into the subspace networks that connected the hegemony together. Every being in the hegemony felt it. Not fear, not pain, but hope. For one shining instant, the most terrible empire in galactic history felt what it was like to believe that things could be better, that cruelty was not inevitable, that mercy was possible. And with that hope came truth. Velith broadcast everything: the real history of the Noctari, the Silence Protocol, the 47 genocides the hegemony had committed and hidden. Every secret, every lie, every buried atrocity, all of it flooded across the galaxy in a single overwhelming wave. The Sun Eater went dark. Its operator, weeping with shock and grief, shut it down willingly. And across hegemony space, revolution began. On Valor Prime, citizens stormed the halls of power, demanding accountability. In the Kreth systems, military commanders turned on political leaders. Among the Mendori, the faction that had secretly opposed the hegemony for centuries finally emerged into the open. The empire did not fall in a day, but it fell. On Earth, Velith collapsed. They found her in the center of the ruined chamber, her body transformed. She was no longer pale. Her skin glowed with soft golden light. Her hair had turned white, like snow in sunlight. Her eyes, when they opened, were no longer red. They were the color of honey, the color of hope. Velith? Una knelt beside her. Can you hear me? I hear everything, Velith whispered. I feel everything. There is so much hope in the universe. So much pain, too. But so much hope. What happened to you? Velith smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had worn in over 1,000 years. I became something new. The war ended 3 months later. The hegemony dissolved into fragments, its component species going their separate ways. Some tried to rebuild their empires. Most did not. The truth was too well known now, the crimes too clearly documented. Humanity emerged from the conflict transformed. They were no longer a minor species, ignored and dismissed. They were the ones who had stood against tyranny, the ones who had shown mercy to their enemy, the ones who had proven that power without compassion was nothing at all. Other species came to them now, asking for help, for guidance, for alliance. Humans were not the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but they were something more important. They were trusted. 1 year after the war ended, Velith stood on a balcony in New Seoul, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and red. She no longer needed to feed on emotions. The transformation had changed her fundamentally. She could exist on ambient emotional energy now, absorbing the general feeling of hope that permeated human civilization without taking anything from anyone. Una joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. They had spent a lot of time together in the past year. Velith was learning how to live again, and Una was learning that the universe was bigger and stranger and more beautiful than she had ever imagined. The Mendori ambassador asked me to speak at their independence celebration, Velith said, accepting her tea. They want the galaxy to see that the Noctari are not monsters. What will you tell them? The truth, that I am the last of my kind, that my people are gone forever, but that their memory lives on, and that memory has been restored. Velith sipped her tea. Also that humans make excellent friends, even if they are extremely strange. Una laughed. We prefer eccentric. You prefer many things that make no sense. It is part of your charm. They watched the sun set in comfortable silence. Around them, the city hummed with life. Children played in the streets. Families shared meals. Lovers walked hand in hand. Ordinary moments of an ordinary evening in an extraordinary time. What will you do now? Una asked eventually. You have lived 300,000 years. You have seen empires rise and fall. What does someone like you do with eternity? Velith considered the question carefully. I think, she said finally, I would like to see what hope looks like. Everywhere. For as long as it takes. I want to visit every corner of this galaxy and find the people who have forgotten how to dream. I want to show them what your species showed me. That mercy is not weakness. That kindness is not foolish. That choosing to stop is the bravest thing anyone can do. She turned to look at Una. But first, I believe I owe you a trip to Andromeda. There is a restaurant there with a view of the galactic collision that will not finish for another billion years. I would very much like to show it to you. Una's face lit up. Really? I promised, did I not? And the Noctari always keep their promises. She reached out and took Yuna's hand. After everything, the torture, the war, the transformation, this simple gesture still felt like a miracle. Human warmth against her skin, human trust freely given. They stood together as the last light faded from the sky, two unlikely friends at the end of one story and the beginning of another. Behind them, in the gathering darkness, the first stars emerged, ancient lights from ancient fires, burning across distances too vast to comprehend. Somewhere out there, in a quiet corner of the galaxy, a dying star collapsed into silence. The station that had been Velith's prison for 1,000 years had finally died. Its dark purpose ended, but its prisoner was free, and she was finally, truly home.